Hi, everyone. I'm Terralon. Welcome to Time Out with Tinseltown Mom. I'm here today with Jennie Marie Battistin, an author and licensed marriage family therapist. Today, we're going to talk about technology addiction among youth and signs your kids may be addicted. Hi, Jennie Marie. Welcome.
Oh, good morning or good afternoon. Which is it?
Yes, good afternoon. I know. It's afternoon now. I know it feels the days just keep running into each other, the times.
Right? It does.
So thanks so much for being here today. Can you just give us a little introduction about who you are, your area of practice?
Sure. So I'm a licensed marriage family therapist. I'm based out of Burbank, California. We have an office also in Santa Clarita, and I'm also licensed in Nevada, Tennessee, Georgia, Washington, Oregon, and hopefully soon New York. So I have clients from pretty much around the country. I started off working on a high school campus in my early years of career. It's interesting because I was nervous about what do I have to say to teenagers, and my pre-teenage daughter at the time was like, "Mom, you'll be great. All my friends love you." So I was like, "Oh, okay." And I soon learned that I loved working with teenagers, which was so much fun. And then I subsequently wrote 2 books, actually guided towards teenagers using the principle of mindfulness and how they can just, feel a little bit more free from the anxiety and the stress of our world, and just accept themselves a little bit more non-judgmentally, as well as just, interact with their parents with a little less judgment.
Oh, okay, great. Well, thank you again for being here. I know you can give us a lot of great insight into our youth of today. So today we're talking about technology addiction among our youth. And I know a lot of parents are probably concerned and wondering if their child even falls within that category. But first, I want to ask you as a professional, is there a such thing as a technology addiction?
Yeah, in 2018, the World Health Organization actually added to the diagnostic criteria gaming addiction. So it is something that is now being more seen as possibly an addiction that's out there. While the psychology manuals don't quite yet label it that, we have done a lot of research over the past 10 years, and we're seeing an increase, and we're seeing the effects on even younger kids, not just our teenagers. And they believed back in 2012, maybe about 14% of teens had signs of a gaming addiction. And most recently, a big study that came out in 2020 suggests that it might be somewhere in the neighborhood of actually 20%. And with this past year of being in the pandemic, there is some concern that that may have risen as much as 30% of teenagers may have some form of a gaming addiction.
Oh, wow. So before we talk about what that looks like, the gaming addiction, let's talk about just from your professional experience, like on average, how much technology time is expected from teens? Like what's the norm? Like, let's start with child and then for a teen. And I know it's different because of the pandemic, but just generally speaking, what do the experts say?
Originally we thought that, possibly the technology involvement of kids was somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 to 2 hours, but we're starting to realize that pretty consistently it can be as much as 3 to 4 hours. And then, of course, with this pandemic, we're seeing in excess of 6 to 8 hours daily that kids are connected to either their gaming devices or social media on their phones, some computer use also with the social media, but primarily on the phones.
Okay, and is that considered normal right now?
No, not normal. Other than we kind of were trying to balance out, it was socialization for kids because it was the only social connection. And most of us experts really would like to see that that's, kept to a minimum of an hour, hour and a half a day, just because we know there's something different about socializing through a game or on social media versus that face-to-face interaction.
Okay. So just going back to the technology addiction, what is the age that someone can actually have an addiction to gaming or technology?
Yeah, unfortunately, we're seeing it younger. We have some kids even in our practice of 8, 9 years old that parents are having, significant problems with kids having outbursts when they're taking their games away, when they won't buy them more Robux, or they can't have more time on, various different games that they've found, rewards in, playing. So it can start as young as 8, 9. We typically start to see it more around that pre-adolescent age 12, 13, 14, which, kids at that age are a little bit awkward. Socialization can be a little bit awkward. So we can see how gaming can feel a little safer to maybe socialize with their friends through that. So at first it becomes a safe place that they can explore and hang out with their friends, to avoid the discomfort of, the awkwardness of the actual face-to-face socialization.
Yeah, and I can imagine there's probably more of that during COVID, where they've been out of school for most of the school year, so they're used to socialization online as opposed to in
Mm-hmm.
person. So it might be even hard for them to even go back to like normal, like in person socialization. A lot of kids and youth.
Yes.
So just for parents listening, what are some signs that they should be looking for to let them know that their child might fall into this category?
Yeah, if you're seeing some sadness or anxiety with your kids when, they're separated from their digital devices, or, let's say the internet goes down and your kid just totally has a meltdown about it. There might be some signs that this is becoming out of balance, that this is, bridging past just a habit and really kind of moving more into an addiction. Or if they just have a generally lost sense of, inability to regulate their time. They tell you that they're only going to spend 30 minutes on a game, and 2 hours later, you're trying to get them off the game. Or the bigger thing that we're seeing is kids are just losing interest in some of the day-to-day activities, such as their sports activities, or going and hanging out with friends, or engaging with their schoolwork. So those are some early signs that we definitely can see that they might be getting out of balance.
So let's say there's a parent who's very concerned that their child falls within that category. Like, what should be their first course of action if maybe that's their child you're talking about?
Have a conversation. I think it starts there. And also, what are we modeling to our kids? So I think we need to watch and see, well, what are we doing with our technology devices? Are we at dinner time? Do we have our phones with us? Are we sitting on the couch and, connected to our phones? When our kids come out to talk to us, do we put our device down or do we kind of keep it in our hands? So watch what we're doing and just start with a dialogue first. It's the first step that I usually suggest parents have.
Okay, so then where should they go from there? Let's say they have the conversation. Do they have to seek professional help for them? Is that the next step?
I would usually suggest parents first go to the American Association of Pediatrics and pull up their media plan. Sit down with your kids, have a more in-depth conversation, and see if you guys can come up together with a reasonable media plan. Now, if your kid's becoming resistant to this, they're having behavior outbursts, then that's a point where maybe you do need to get some intervention with a therapist. And if we catch it early enough, a lot of times these behaviors can be turned around in as little as 6 to 8 weeks. We can start to get some changes with kids.
So if someone truly does have this addiction, I know, something in the brain is affected. Is it the same thing with technology or is it different? I mean, I know it's kind of early, the statistics out there, but is there any thought that you can give us towards that?
Yeah, definitely. We definitely feel that it is very similar. And so some individuals are going to be more predisposed just because of brain chemistry. So when they're playing the games and they win or they achieve certain levels, they're getting a dopamine release. And dopamine is that really good, feel good type of hormone. So it definitely propels that reward seeking and they want more and more. And this is where the gaming can really become out of balance. So when we used to get that hit of dopamine within 30 minutes, 45 minutes of a game, and maybe we just progressed to one level, now kids are wanting to progress 2 levels, 3 levels, 4 levels to get the same amount of dopamine release. So that's why we really want to watch the behavior. If it's starting to increase the time, gets more preoccupied, they're probably, using that gaming device to get that dopamine hit. So really trying to teach them some other coping skills for when I'm feeling overwhelmed, stressed out, sad, depressed about something that's going on in my world, rather than turning to a gaming device. What else can we do?
That's good advice. Yeah. So, just helping parents out, moms especially, because there's a lot of moms listening. A lot of times, the kids will be on their device, and it's almost time for them to put it away, and they're in the middle of a game, and that's probably the hardest time to actually get them off their device. Do you have any strategy there? Just kind of like making that transition a little bit more seamless for parents.
Yeah, I have a lot of parents who have adopted like a kitchen timer technique. Get the old-fashioned kitchen timer or we set a timer, you're putting it with the kids and you guys have predetermined, hey, we're going to have an hour of gaming time tonight. So let's set a timer so you can see it, so you can watch. And then actually, if you can, try to come in and give them that 20-minute warning. Like, hey, just want to remind you, 20 minutes left of game time, start wrapping it up. So the kids don't feel like it's an abrupt, you come in and it's like, time to get off, time to go to bed. Or it's that 5-minute warning, might be a little, not enough time. So to kind of give them that 20-minute transition, or use a kitchen timer technique to help them be prepared for, oh, I need to be wrapping up. My time's almost up.
So let's say the time is up and the kid is still like, "Oh, well, can I just finish this game?" Do you recommend letting them just finish it, or should you just cut it off? Like,
So you
in
can
that.
ask how much time do you need? If it's 5 minutes, okay, wrap this level up. You got 5 minutes. But we're not going to keep doing the game of 5 more minutes, 5 more minutes, 5 more minutes. You can do, occasionally, depending on the kid. If you have a kid who's going to keep pushing those boundaries, then it's best just to shut it off, deal with the consequence of them being angry, upset with you. Don't take it personal. They might say horrible things to you that may feel disrespectful. Just try to stay neutral and just, relate to them. I'm like, yeah, I know, it's a bummer. You're upset. You can be mad at me that I'm making you turn the game off. And then walk out of the room and let them kind of deal with their emotions in that moment, without standing there and letting them berate you.
Right. Okay. And I'm also hearing, and I don't know if this is just hypothesis or theories, I should say, that somehow mental illness might be connected to like too much gaming. Is that something that's out there, or they're doing more studies on that? Like, what can you
Yeah,
say about that?
yeah, it's definitely an area that we're looking at. We are looking to see if individuals with low-lying anxiety and depression are more predisposed to gaming. So if we kind of think of gaming as like a self-medicating tool, that's where we think that, sometimes it's getting out of balance for individuals rather than them dealing with anxiety or the low-lying depression. They're in a sense numbing that out by using the gaming. So just being aware, watching again for those signs, like, is your kid having difficulty regulating their emotions? Are they not taking good self-care? Are they not wanting to shower and bathe because they're preoccupied with their social media or their gaming? Do you find that they're, withdrawing from you and other social interactions?
Okay. And what are your thoughts on kids having more than one device that they're using at one time? Like, do you think that's an issue? Like they're trying to multitask. Let's say they're wanting to do one thing on their iPad, another thing on the computer. Just have their whole
Yeah.
like setup. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, multitasking is an interesting skill. I think talking about your kids and finding out, again, it's all about that dialogue. What's going on that they feel like they need to have that multiple stimuli? Um, is it just that their brain is a little bit more multitasking, or is it an early sign that maybe they have some ADHD that they're struggling with, and it's hard for them to stay focused on a singular task or activity? Or are they not getting enough reward from just playing the game that they're on, and they have to also be on social media or another game on their iPad? Have a conversation and find out what's kind of going on there with that.
Okay. And what if in their mind they think that they need all three of those things to do whatever they need to perform accurately? Like, do you still think it's okay? Like, if there's a sufficient enough answer, like, do you think it's okay having more than one device? Like, that doesn't do anything like brain wise as far as a stimulus.
We're not sure because there's not enough research that's really looked at multiple devices at one time. We do think that there's a possibility it is an overstimulation and they are not getting enough dopamine from the single device. So again, our concern becomes, if kids are having to use multiple devices, is there some type of addiction that's coming and we're just not getting it from a singular device? If we look at, drug use, why is it one individual progresses from maybe just using weed to now they're using other substances? Is it because they're not getting enough of from those singular substance? So is the same going on with devices? It'll be interesting to see because that's one of the areas that research is kind of going in the next 5 years. Why are kids wanting to use multiple devices? What's going on there?
Yeah. And I think there's probably some concern from parents if they sense, like, let's say there's a family history of addiction and maybe, their family's prone to that. Maybe they think their child is prone to it. Maybe they're seeing some signs in the gaming or the technology, and maybe they have fears that that might carry over to, like substance abuse. Does that sound realistic though?
Yeah, we think that there's a similar mechanism that's going on in the brain that, why is some individuals become addicted to substances and others don't? Why is it that some individuals might become addicted to gaming and others don't? So we think that there is something going on within that brain chemistry and that brain development that, individuals are more predisposed. So again, if we're having to use more than one device, might be an early sign that they're needing that stimulation, that overstimulation, and that there could be a addiction that's starting to form there. So I think it's reasonable to consider having the dialogue and encourage kids to stay with one device and helping them understand the importance of focus. So if we can focus in on one game and stay with that, how much more focused are we going to be in other areas of our life, whether it's with schools or social interactions or someday when we actually have a job?
Right, right. No, that's good. I've been reading a little bit about emotional intelligence. Is that something that you talk about in your practice?
Yeah, absolutely. We really try to teach a lot of our parents about emotion coaching, and it really starts at an early age, helping kids to identify their emotions and have a language around our emotions. So we have a fun sheet that has, cute little emojis on it, and we try to get the kids to identify what is the emotion that's coming from the emoji and what does that emotion feel like in your body? How do you express that emotion? To help them develop an emotional language, as well as just around situations. So maybe they're frustrated with their parents. So let's talk about that. I'm feeling frustrated about what? What specifically with your parents are you frustrated with? I'm frustrated that they're, barging into my room. Okay, well, what do you need? Well, I need a little bit of privacy, or I need a little bit of, feeling like I have my own space. Okay, well, why do you think your parents are barging into your room? Let's have a conversation around that. What feelings can you express to your parents rather than just going to anger and outbursts, but to just really explain with other feelings and emotions what's going on for them.
Okay. And do you think that somehow too much technology can affect emotional intelligence, like the maturity of it?
Well, we see the reason why we think boys are more kind of predisposed to maladaptive behaviors around gaming is that their emotional intelligence really starts to kick in late adolescence, early adulthood. So there's some belief that really the prefrontal cortex, which is the logic reason center of our brain, which communicates with the emotion center of our brain, isn't fully wired until about 25, 26. So we kind of have to do almost some like critical thinking exercises to help them, kind of think through what feeling might be connected here. Um, so, you know, does gaming then interrupt that because we're just staying in this place of, kind of aggression or frustration? And so we're limiting our emotional intelligence because we're just trying to work through that aggression and frustration of like, I haven't gotten to the next level. There's so many other range of emotions. So even talking to your, especially the boys about, it's a bummer, it's disappointing when you can't get to that next level. So that there's more than just anger and frustration that's experienced.
Yeah, that's wow, that's very interesting. Can you think of any other advice to moms out there? Maybe they have some kids in that category, especially with the boys and like you mentioned, like with the gaming and that aggression. Maybe they're seeing a breakdown in their emotional intellect and they're not really knowing how to communicate well with them. Maybe they're like preteens, teenagers, or
Mm-hmm.
older teens, I guess, where it's harder, to communicate. Like, do you have any advice there? I know that's kind of
Yeah,
broad. So anything you
right.
can offer would be helpful.
Yeah, of course, I think a lot of this starts early on, and what's the dialogue we start having with our kids early on, and sit down with them and play. Actually spend 20 minutes with them. Finding out what do they love about this game can create a window to dialoguing more about emotions. So even for you to experience what is it like when you don't get to that next level on the game with your kids and to talk about your own feelings surrounding the frustration or disappointment or sadness and just your day-to-day experience with emotions. So by modeling it with our kids, they can start to create a dialogue as well.
And what are some other negative long-term effects of too much screen time?
Yeah, so one of the negative effects that we're worried about is then when kids need to launch into, the workforce, how are they going to interact with their coworkers, their bosses? Are they going to be able to do that? And, obviously in a really interesting time right now where more and more individuals are talking about like, oh gosh, we've worked from home successfully this past year. You know, can we continue to do this on a certain level? And we're certainly seeing teens talk about, well, I'm only going to have a job where I can work from home, and so I have limited interaction. So it's interesting to see, how is our social structure going to be set up? So really trying to find activities that our kids can engage in that is not just so they're only having socialization through game time, keeping them involved in sports or music activities or art class or drama classes are some really great ways to just kind of keep them expanding so that they can socially relate. Having your kids make a phone call to change an appointment, I think is a really great way to help our kids be able to relate socially in our world. Because we see, gosh, in our practice, a lot of times we have parents that are calling for their 25, 26-year-old to make an appointment because their kid has never been able to get on the phone and make an appointment. They feel overwhelmed by that, the thought of even getting on the phone with someone. So trying to do those simple tasks or have them actually call a family member is a great way to help expand them beyond that social world.
That's good. Yeah. I think even something good that came from COVID with that, as far as the maturity level, is the kids are having to interact with their teachers more. So because they're online, they all have their own email address. So if they missed an assignment, they can email their teacher directly and, try to work through that problem. So I think on that level, there's been some good out of it, even though, it's still online and it's all technology based. But,
Right.
I guess there's pros and cons to it, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In life, it's all about balance, isn't it?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So tell me about your book. I know you have 2 books out, right? Tell me about your books.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have the Mindfulness Journal for Teens, which has prompts to really kind of help them explore a lot of their emotional world and how do they deal with emotions? How do they look at their world? So that they can be a little bit more present in the day. Watch for anxious thoughts. Watch for, what do I do with my sad thoughts? What do I do with, how do I relate to my peers, my parents? So the journal is a really great place to just start to promote just like calm and peace and a non-judgmental stance to the world, being present in the moment, non-anxiously living in the moment. And then the mindfulness, I have mindfulness for teens in 10 minutes a day, which is filled with 60 different exercises that are categorized by morning, midday, and evening. They really can help promote focus, concentration. There's all this great research out that if teens engage with a mindfulness activity, even as little as 3 to 5 minutes a day, within 30 days, they report that their focus and their concentration is up and they have improved memory. They would start to perform better on tests and they find that they're moving through their homework actually quicker. So a lot of my teens are like, you're kidding me. If I do one exercise 3 to 5 minutes a day, I don't even need to do it the full 10 minutes that your book says, that I will spend less time on my homework and perform better on my tests. And I'm like, yes, you will. And they're like, I'm not sure. And I'm like, well, I give you a 30-day challenge. Give it a try. And my teens that have actually engaged with that 30-day challenge have actually come back and reported, you're right, I actually am doing better on my tests. I am getting through my homework quicker.
What is mindfulness, Jenny Marie, if you don't mind explaining that?
So mindfulness is the ability to stay present in the moment, to accept what's going on in our world without trying to push it away with judgment or anxiety, and to not react with an outburst of emotion, to stay in a little bit more of a neutral zone and to be aware of what's actually going on in the moment for us, to be connected to our feelings and to our thoughts, and to be just presently aware of what's going on around us. And to have, increased compassion for ourselves as well as others around us. So it takes us a little bit out of being like kind of an egocentric, self-centered mind and to actually have a little bit of compassion for those around us.
That's interesting. Okay, is that something that you focus on in your practice?
Yeah, we do a lot of mindfulness with our teens and our adults. And there's a lot of great apps out there. If you have kids that are a little less likely to pick up a book and read a book, I love the Headspace app out there. They have a version for the kids now. And they're little exercises. One of my favorite exercises to do with my preteens is what we call the superhero stance. It comes out of the work of a social psychologist that found that power posing, which is kind of like standing in like that Superman pose with hands on your hips and kind of like raising your shoulders up, and just take a moment and to look at yourself in the mirror and to just like, embrace a positive affirmation. Like, may I be confident today. May I be focused. May I be strong. And just to, hold those to be that affirmation to be true for yourself. It can be just really an empowering moment for our kids if they just kind of do that little Superman pose, especially if they have a presentation they need to do at school before they head out. Or another great mindfulness activity is just, paying attention to our breath. I love 4 square breathing, which is breathing in for a count of 4, holding your breath for a count of 4, breathing out for 4, and then holding your breath for a count of 4. And just do 4 or 5 cycles of that. So if your kids are feeling a little anxious, they can do it in the classroom. No one needs to even know. So like before they take a test or before they give a presentation, or even if they're going to go out and meet, a friend that they're, new social interaction, it's nice to do just a little bit of mindful breathing.
Yeah, I've been hearing more and more people talk about mindfulness. I just haven't done the research to see what it is. Is it affiliated with any religion of any sort, or does it infringe upon any religions?
It doesn't really. I mean, it comes out of probably some old Buddhist tendencies, but the modern version of mindfulness tends to be more free of any, sort of religious aspect. I think a lot of other faiths think of like meditation or, even like, singing songs or, reading a religious text could be a form of mindfulness as well. Prayer, would be a form of mindfulness. So, mindfulness, I think, really kind of is, come out of different aspects of religion, but really is free of religious bias at this point.
Right. So you kind of take it as your own, like depending on what your own beliefs are, you kind of practice your own, whatever, if it's involved in your faith or whatnot.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it comes out of, even kind of that golden rule piece of like, do unto others as, you would have done unto yourself. I think there's a lot of that mindfulness principles of having compassion for, your fellow person in your life. And, how would I treat them? How would I have compassion for them as I would want them to have compassion for me?
Right. Okay. Well, you are just a wealth of information, Jennie Marie. Where can people find you if they want to know more about you and your practice?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at hope_therapy_center or hope-therapy-center.com on the web. And we have a Facebook page as well. That's just Hope Therapy Center.
Thanks so much for listening to Time Out with Tinseltown Mom. If you liked what you heard today, please be so kind and rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time.